whatever comes to mind when you think of, if you are an organization who cares about like the mental well-being of kids, how these can help.
Yes. So just speaking about the program itself, the resilience discussions that we are so fortunate to be able to have with our kids on a weekly basis. Um, I think it's super impactful. I think it allows a space for us as adults and young people to have meaningful dialogue. And it creates it just creates a platform where it's organic and it's happening, and versus us as coaches just kind of coming off the top of our heads and just preaching and things like that, where kids sometimes like shut down. You know what I mean? That the conversations are very kid friendly. I think the topics of discussion are things that the kids resonate with right away. So it immediately like gets them to be engaged. It piques their interest like right away. Um, Last night we had a discussion, and the discussion was, do what you need to do even when it's not fun. And just because of that topic, just because of that title, the kids start thinking. They start thinking, and like the first three things that came up was chores, homework, and reading. And and that kind of led our conversation. I think like they even start answering some of the questions before we even got to ask the questions, because the topic was something that just resonated heavily with them, right? And it was just like, oh, I know I need to do my homework, but I don't like to do it. You know what I mean? And, oh, I know I need to clean up my room, but I don't like to do it, right? But it allowed them to like have a connection with something that's like right there in their experience. So, I think like all of the conversations, all of the topics, like create a space for that. And it's just up to us as coaches or adult mentors to kind of just guide the kids through that phase of questions and answers and just dialogue, if you will.
Because I love that you say that, because one of the things that I think this is about having adults listen to kids, right?
Absolutely.
Because like you just used the word preaching. And so a lot of times it's like all the adults are like, I know everything. I'm going to tell you everything. And this is really the opposite. It's having adults who you respect actually listen to your answers as a kid.
Yes. Yes. Like it allows the kids to kind of own the floor, to own the moment, to own the conversation. And I think a couple things happen when you do that, when a kid, or just anybody for that matter, feels like they're owning the conversation. Like they talk with a little bit more emotion, they talk a little bit more vulnerable, they feel like they're being heard. And as soon as someone feels like they're not being heard, they shut down. So if we want these kids to open up, if we want these kids to share with us, how they're feeling, like how they can become better, it's really up to us to give them the floor and let them own it, so like they can feel heard. And I think that's what these conversations really do. It gives our kids a voice, and it's up to us as adults to listen, because it's really easy to just hijack the conversation and start to, you got to do this, you got to do that, well, don't do that, well, don't do that. But when you listen to the kids, you learn something about yourself too. Being an adult coach, being an adult mentor, we learned a lot about ourselves, because we don't think of things from that perspective. But when we really understand where our kids are coming from and what they're thinking, it helps me become a better coach, because now I'm able to empathize a little bit more with the kids' perspective, and then become better for them, because I'm actually a servant to them. So I need to be able to serve them in a way that they feel heard, seen, and just felt.
I mean, those are beautiful words. What do you think about the idea that it's, you're learning something about yourself that then you can bring into your own life, in your own family? And, does I get asked that, well, do the coaches, do they bring it home? Is it helpful? Or if we did this in a school, would the teachers get something from it themselves, or would they be able to bring it home to their own families? What do you think of that?
No, I definitely think it happens, because until you go through one of these conversations, until you have them, over and over again, you start to really like see and understand how meaningful they are, and how helpful they are to young people. So like, why wouldn't you want to help your own kids, your own family, and your own circles, you know what I mean, to be able to open up in such ways. But I think just with myself, like I find myself, and I'm an educator, right? So I've been in the schools, I've been teaching, I've been doing this for a very long time, but you learn something new every day, especially when it comes to young people. the world continues to evolve. So thoughts and things of young people continue to evolve as well. And sometimes I find myself being out of the loop. Like, whoa, did I just say that? Is that still a word? Like, is that still cool? So like when you get a chance to like have these dialogues and conversations with young people, they teach you something. And now I'm able to be more equipped. I don't have kids of my own, but I deal with a lot of kids from a lot of different programs in schools, but I'm able to have more thoughtful conversations with those kids because of what I'm learning with the kids in this specific conversation. So I think our coaches for sure, because a lot of our coaches have kids and have families, and they talk about just how this conversation has helped them understand kids. So I'm pretty sure they have the conversation at home. But it also, a lot of our coaches are volunteers or they're police officers. So when I say that because most volunteers or police officers, with the volunteers for that matter, they're just stepping up and doing something because they see it's a need for it. But it's not like they went to school to like be an educator or went to school to like understand like how kids think, or they might have kids of their own, but it's a little bit different when you're working with kids from so many different backgrounds and things like that all at once. So like this also like helps the coaches and trains the coaches a little bit to be more open-minded, with kids from various backgrounds, right? So like for that volunteer coach, like they're listening to these kids and they're like, wow, having all kind of aha moments themselves because they like, these kids went through that. And I wasn't trained to talk to kids about this stuff, but these kids are teaching me stuff. And then for the officers, they go to the police academy to be a police officer, not to work with kids, not to sit there and listen to kids pour their feelings out. So this also creates a space for them, I think, to be vulnerable in the sense to where it's like, okay, like that's really happening. That's really a thing. Like maybe I need to back off a little bit. Maybe I need to approach this from a different situation or a different type of perspective, because I didn't know that kid was going through that. I didn't even know that was a thought, and when we grew up years before these kids grow up, it's different. Times have changed. So what might have been normal or cool for me or okay for me is not the same with these kids anymore today. So to hear it from them, it actually teaches us as adults, and then we can apply it to our everyday lives with our families and our other circles outside of our programs.
I mean, those are such good points, Mark. I mean, that's just your words are just so powerful, just the way you put it all together. I mean, anything else you would add? I mean, that's enough from my perspective, but anything else, if you were, for someone who really doesn't get it, doesn't know anything about it, why would they consider adding this to their program?
I would say just to try it, right? And I think you don't know anything until you try it, and you can look at that from perspective. You can just use food as an example, right? I have so many foods that I say I don't like because they don't look like they taste good. And then I try it and then I'm like, wow, like this is really, really good. And then it has benefits, right? So I think this is another one of those things. It's not a food, you're not going to eat it, but I think like it's definitely some type of food for your soul, definitely. So, you know what I mean? You're going to digest it in a certain way that's going to be helpful to you. So I think like, don't knock it till you try it is one of the things that I would say about this program. But then also if you're serious about this type of work, if you're driven and purposeful in types of work where it's giving back to kids and helping kids become better versions of themselves, this is something that you want to add to your toolbox. We all have our own toolboxes, but like how many tools do you have in it? And at the end of the day, like I want to continue to add more tools into my toolbox, because you never know when you're going to need your hammer. You never know when you're going to need your wrench. You never know when you're going to need your vice grip. So to just have them in your toolbox, you always going to be equipped for any situation. So I think this gives us that, because it allows us to like load our toolboxes up with so much more knowledge about young people that we ultimately won't have if we didn't go through these conversations. So now that we go through these conversations, we're learning, and we're becoming better individuals ourselves to help serve other kids. So, I would just say try it. And, I think the biggest thing for me where it helps me at is it helps me with the guide. It gives me a guide to kind of like start somewhere. There's sometimes where we start here in the conversation and we'll read the topic and read the beginning, and like the conversation will just take off on itself. And it just like has a mind of its own, and like it'll just start bringing up all of these other things that I couldn't have thought of, or I probably wouldn't have thought of by just asking a simple question. So it allows a space for that. And I think that's just healthy, you know what I mean? Allowing our kids to express themselves, to open up and to just talk. One of the coaches yesterday, said, this is really cool. And because he was new, it was actually one of the officers, he was new with us. and he saw how we sat down at the end of our program and sat down and talked with kids and stuff like that. And he said, this is really cool because they're just able to talk. And he recognized and acknowledged the fact of how much talking and just opening up and expressing yourself. Like, he's like, I feel good right now. You know what I mean? From like not only listening to the kids, but he was participating and talking. And sometimes like talking is just a form of therapy. You know what I mean? Sometimes we hold on to so much, we hold on to so many things that are happening or going on in our lives. And when you just talk them out, sometimes you leave that room or that conversation and you just feel better. And you don't really understand why, but you just really released, a lot of things. So I think for coaches, it's beneficial in that aspect. For listeners, it's beneficial in that aspect. And especially the kids, is very beneficial in that aspect because they talk. And kids that normally don't talk, they build confidence because they said something here that others accepted. And then they go to school and all of a sudden they're raising their hand in the classroom and the teacher's not understanding why. But you got to make these connections is because they're learning how to talk in the public space and they're being acknowledged, they're being heard, they're being felt. So now they feel a little bit more confident and comfortable doing it in other settings. And now they feel good. So, I just think it's just a great platform, Christian, what you've done with this. Sometimes people might say like, oh, or they might feel like, well, I don't know if the kids are going through that or, here or there. Just try it. You know what I mean? Because they're all kids and we're all humans and we all go through the same things. We might use different words. We might say it in different ways, but we all going through the same things.
I mean, you just gave me goosebumps. You are so articulate, and I have in my own little heart like what I hope that it does. And then when I hear you say it, it's just like, oh my gosh, it just makes me so happy. Thank you.
I'm
And you're
glad.
just you have such a way with words.
I appreciate it. I like to talk a lot. I used to get in trouble in school. My mom said, teacher say I talk too much. She told me like, you better start figuring out, like, if you're going to be doing all this talking, you better figure out how to use it. But I just, and I guess like when you're passionate about something, you know what I mean? It just comes off that way. And it's nothing scripted or nothing, but this is how I feel about this program, right? This is how I feel about the work that I do. So when that happens and that's occurring, like, it's just, the words are just going to come. So, but it's not something I'm making up to sound good. It's really what's happening. It's real experiences. I'm seeing it. I'm watching it. You know what I mean? So kudos to you and hats off to you. And thank you for just giving me and my team here at Project Blue and the I Play Elite Academy and Watch Rams and all of Marching Beauties and all of our programs, something to just use and expand our toolbox and ultimately service our kids. So,
Well, kudos to you because from the beginning you were open. A
yeah,
lot of times people are like, I don't want to do something else and I'm not
yeah,
comfortable with that or whatever. And you were just so open and just so good at it right from the beginnings. And that's just your heart, I think.
I
So,
appreciate it. Well, it made me better, right? It's made me better. So like, I can reference these conversations just like that now because we've had so many of them. You know what I mean?
mhm,
What we talked about last week, and to be honest with you, if I can add, it helps me in my one-on-one conversations with kids. So as
mm,
a coach and as a mentor, there's times where we're outside of the group setting where, a kid might be going through something, the kid might be struggling, or a kid might just need somebody to talk to because of life, right? In situations. And like, because like I've had such a series of these conversations, like I'm able to reference some of the things that we talked about in these conversations to help me in the situation that I'm dealing with a kid in that particular moment, right? Because
yeah,
when you talk about being resilient, like that's going to pop up everywhere. And I think coaches and mentors and adult, we teach resiliency all the time. Like that's just something we teach and without even knowing it. Right. So
mhm,
now having like a framework to kind of help guide the conversation, it's so meaningful because now I'm able to like really pull on good words and good curriculum to kind of help me do that. But I tell the coaches all the time, like you by you being a coach, like, and you telling the football team to get back up and to go hard, and you teaching kids how to be resilient. So like, why not just kind of expand it a little bit? You know what I mean? So no, it's just
yeah.
pretty cool. It's pretty cool because I literally was having a conversation with a kid last week, and I'm referencing some of the stuff that we talk about on our Monday night or Wednesday night calls. Like just because it's now it's here, it's
Yeah.
here with me. So absolutely.
That is a beautiful thing. Well, thank you for taking this time. I really appreciate
Welcome.
it.
You're welcome. I hope you got the recording.